You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty.
I would have literally never remembered those details, other details like getting in the MRI, they're pulling glass and metal out of my back just so I can get an MRI when you're in the ER. And these are things that they seem minor, but they're the things that your brain hangs up on.
Hello there, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia, and on today's episode, I'm going to be having a very special guest, a dear friend of mine. Her name is Toni Marzullo. Toni has actually been in our inner circle for a little while because she is very close, even best friends with my little sister. And she is also a past bride of mine, as I had the pleasure of photographing her and her husband's wedding in 2018. But when Toni was in college, she was actually hit by a vehicle while she was crossing the crosswalk. From that experience, she suffered physical, emotional, and mental trauma through the accident and even in the recovery process. And as she worked through healing her body, she also moved forward with her life. She ended up marrying her college sweetheart, and they became pregnant with their first child. And it was after the birth of her daughter, tied in with postpartum hormones, that all of the unresolved trauma from her accident started to come up for her. She began to realize that the incident had her questioning her faith in her humanity and desiring to understand the healing power and protection mechanisms of her brain. This journey kind of ultimately led her to this holistic perspective that once you start working through your PTSD, so do all of the kind of other emotional and psychological factors that you're kind of dealing with in life come with it. It's kind of this whole package thing that you learn about yourself, life, trauma, pain, healing, the whole thing. Of course, it is much better coming from her mouth, her story. So here is Toni sharing a bit from within. Hi, Toni. As you know, the A Bit From Within podcast is all about sharing something you've experienced or gone through, sharing it out into the world, and knowing that like other people will listen to it and that maybe they'll have new takeaways or insight from what you've shared. But I thought we could just begin with a little bit of a rapid fire Q&A just so we can all get to know you a little better. How does that sound?
That's great. Yeah, I love icebreakers.
Perfect. This is going to be that. Where are you from?
Originally Denver, Colorado. So I'm a native.
You are.
I am. And
one of the few.
One of the few. And then college in Grand Junction. And now I'm here in the Springs.
My next question was, where did you go to college? And why did you choose that school?
My parents, they said in-state only. And I am an independent individual. So I said, what's the farthest university? And that mixed with their science program it sealed the deal. I visited the campus once and said, Dad, we're applying tonight.
Perfect. And what did you graduate with?
I studied biology and chemistry. So it's technically a pre-med degree, but my goal was originally dental school.
And what do you do for work now? Or like, what is your career focus?
Yeah. So I was a dental assistant for about 6-ish years or 5.5, 6 years. And now I'm actually in dental hygiene school. So I started that back in the fall. So I'm in my second semester there now. So I am not working. That's an 8 to 5 mixed with being a mama and a wife and a friend. You don't have time.
Don't have time. And my next question is, are you passionate about dental hygienistry?
Oh yeah, that's like a totally different podcast topic.
For sure.
I just, the more I've been in dentistry, the more I've realized that, it's the gateway for the human body. So there are so much systemic implications that come from dental health that it's like a no-brainer. People should see a hygienist twice a year. For their whole body health. An oral cancer screening, it comes down to saving lives. And that sounds cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah.
So it's just a job that matters in a good way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. And I love that you are able to work in a field that you are so passionate about.
Oh
so
gosh,
I think that's a big piece of who you are.
Oh yeah. I've got tooth everything. Yeah. I could talk about any kind of dentistry. You want to talk about sleep problems, this, that. Yeah. My Instagram's full of it.
Well, I will tell all of our listeners that unfortunately we will not be talking about dental hygiene
No,
today. But
that's
if you
okay.
want to find Toni, talk to her about it.
And we'll do our own phone conversation.
Exactly. And then you kind of mentioned this, but this is the next question is, are you married?
I am. I married my college sweetheart, Dan. So I think this August will be like 9 or 10. Well, we'll have been married this August for 4 years, but we've been together, I think, coming on like 9 years, 10 years.
That's amazing.
Got a little girl. She's turns 3 in May, and we're just living the dream, you know?
I love it. Okay. My next question is, what is your favorite way to spend a day off?
It used to be probably running, trail running. And these days, I think it comes down to relaxing and with family. Like, I like days where Dan and Lily and I, we go get breakfast and then we just hang out, and it's fun to stay up late with Dan and watch one of our shows. So I think it's not so active anymore. It'd be just relaxing and being home with my people, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
And would you say that in general, you're more of an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm definitely an extrovert, but I have a strong personality. So in certain situations, I tone that down for new people, and I tend to act a little introverted, but I'm not. I'm very outspoken and opinionated.
And we love that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my final question before we kind of dive into our topic here today is, are you a podcast listener yourself?
You know, I get sent lots of dentistry podcasts, and traditionally I don't like listening to people talk at me. I like to read it or see them. But I listen to one podcast religiously, and it's called The Sleepy Bookshelf. And they just pick a classic novel because I love classic literature. And once a week, they put out a new episode of reading that book. So they'll read the book for 45 minutes and then another 45. And her voice is so calming. I've never even gotten through like one chapter of the first book they've read. So it's just nice. It's a good way for me to act like I read that night, but it's calming. And that's the only podcast I'm like religious about.
I love that. And I love that tells us a lot about you. It tells us that you love classic literature. It also tells us you like structure, that 45 minutes, I'm good. I got my reading in, done.
Yeah. Yeah. I never make it 45 minutes, but
yeah. Who does really most of these days?
I don't.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's so nice to begin to get to know you. And, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking a lot about healing and trauma.
Yeah.
So, and specifically through your lens of what you've experienced in your life. So could you we'll dive into the details as you go, so don't worry if you forget any parts, but could you kind of share the story of what brought you to this moment in your life where this topic became an important one to you?
Yeah. I guess, the like pinnacle point or like life altering point in my life, was in December of 2015. Like you said, I was crossing a crosswalk. All the lanes of traffic had stopped, but an 80-year-old gentleman just wasn't paying attention. He turned onto the street, gunned it at about 40, and then just nailed me at the crosswalk. And I was really lucky considering, we had been on bikes, but I wasn't wearing my helmet or anything like that. I was really lucky that I only flew into his windshield. That's when he slammed on the brakes. So I kind of went flying off, and it was a whole thing. The road was closed. it's Little Grand Junction.
Gosh.
And so I dealt with that for years. And you deal with like the physical consequences of that, like back problems, I had ankle problems and those things. And then you kind of plod along in life and you think, okay, I'm doing good. I'm just plugging along. And then, something about that influx of so many hormones from having a child, just like, I think tipped my brain over into time to heal mode. And that manifested real manically for me, and not understanding why am I having these symptoms? Why am I feeling this way? Why, and just working through that until you finally come to terms with, what has happened and where
Mhm.
you find yourself now, where you want to be. But I chase this idea of, well, before the accident, I did XYZ, or before the accident, I was like this. And now it's just kind of like, you're different. You're post trauma
Mhm.
Toni or whomever. And how is that person going to move forward in a healthy manner, whatever that means for, whoever. But
Yeah.
and that's kind of where I like to navigate my life. I was meditating one time. Well, someone forced me to take a yoga class. I don't slow down well and do yoga, but it was a work activity. And she said, if we are all living our life at 0 degrees, that's your true north, you're going 0 degrees. And she said, can you imagine if you are off by a fraction of a degree a day? And she said, okay, in a week, it's not a big deal. In a month, it's kind of, but she said, if you live that way in years, you are so far off your 0 degrees, you're going a totally different direction. And that was like a huge eye opener. Like, I am not at 0. I'm probably at like 175. Like, I'm going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And then, I think once you start acknowledging those, just not deficits, but kind of like red flags. When you say
Yeah.
that's me, it's not a good thing, but it's me. I think is your brain suddenly going, okay, we're ready. Like we're
Yeah.
acknowledging faults, we're acknowledging problems, we're ready to handle it. Because 22-year-old Toni was like, I'm fine, leave me alone. Even though everybody's, are you okay? Do you need to talk to someone? No.
Yeah. Like, it's just my spine.
It's
Leave
my
me alone.
spine. Yeah, it's fine. I'll
Yeah.
get surgery on it every 3 or 4 years till I die.
Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, and so it's like it just has been an interesting couple years, especially a year and a half for me,
Yeah.
to just have these revelations and just realize that trauma is, it's something we all experience to our own extent, and it's not
Mhm.
fair to say, well, I used to tell myself, well, I wasn't in Iraq getting shot at, it must not be PTSD. But then you think about, well, no, you were hit by a car, and that's vulnerable, that's out of your control, and that's
Yeah.
traumatic. And then
Right.
let's add on the physical injury, the long-term care you're going to need. And it's just remarkable what your brain can do as far as shutting it off to protect
Mhm.
you and then saying, okay, they're ready. Open it
Yeah.
up, flood it out.
And I think it's interesting because I've heard so many people say that their trauma surfaces at the like least ideal time. Like, here you are, a brand new mom, first time
Yeah.
mom, and all of a sudden you're like dealing with stuff that you 5 years
Yeah.
prior that you thought you had already kind of had the worst of it. I mean, that
Yeah.
talk about an unlikely time to want to have to face that.
Right. And then you question, as a new mom, and I don't find myself to be a particularly like nurturing mom. Not that I don't love my daughter, but we're all moms in our own way. So
Right.
you're already kind of questioning that. And then
Yeah.
to suddenly you have those hormones and you start mistaking trauma from this as, I'm not a good mom, I'm depressed, I'm XYZ.
Yeah.
And so it's been like beyond a breath of fresh air. And it's been great for my relationship with my daughter to realize, like, nope, that's not feelings of motherhood. That's trauma coming out, and it's ready to be handled. They're
Yeah.
separate, they're separate things.
Yeah.
It just happened to be, that cortisol, that stress, half the time the epinephrine, the lack of sleep, that your body's like, all right, something's got to go. We
Yeah.
got to make room for more.
Yeah. So let's talk more about that. So you had your daughter.
Hmm.
What can you kind of zoom us into that and kind of share a little bit more about like how long had you been feeling kind of some kind of way that didn't feel like you? And what were some of those like what were your red flags?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we first had Lily, I think every mom for the first 3 to 6 months, you're sleep deprived. You don't know what the heck you're doing. A million people are letting you know you don't know what you're doing. Some people are supporting you. You're just, and then there's just like the mom shaming. And so I don't think any of that was, I think it's fair to say that was the just traditional, regular postpartum depression,
Yeah.
um, but then it was kind of like 6 months to a year after. And, I've worked with a really amazing dentist, and he and I got close, and I just was irritable all the time, cranky. I couldn't adapt to stress anymore. I was sweating through my scrubs every day, and just like signs like that, that
Okay.
finally he and I connected the dots that you're not sleeping, period. You're not sleeping. Even when you're laying in bed, you're closing your eyes, fine, but something's happening to your body. And so then I became with this concept of sleep and how sleep heals. So if you're not sleeping, how are you healing? Physically, mentally. And then from there, I kind of realized that if you're not sleeping, you're at no point shutting down these autonomic systems that have you in a fight or flight all day. And that's what it came down to, is realizing like I'm spending 22 hours a day in fight or flight, and I started to get this shoulder pain, and I thought I'd broken my collarbone, and a physical therapist thought I'd broken my collarbone. And I went and saw an orthopedic doc, and he said, your collarbone's fine. Like it's muscular. Something is muscular. So then I start talking with my PT about, well, I don't know, maybe it's my shoulder. And we realized I was so tensed up with my shoulders all day that I was just cramping all the muscles in my neck, causing me to think I'd broken my collarbone.
Oh my God.
So I start putting all these pieces together. I'm like, something is physically manifesting here, telling me there's tension, there's stress. And I'm realizing I don't really have a reason for that. My life's at a good point. My daughter is getting older. I'm handling my school load with, work, because I was doing prereqs at the time for the program I'm in, just fine, and just talking more and more with my boss and realizing it's triple, quadruple fold. Like you're tense because you're not sleeping, and you're sleeping because you're not tense, or
Yeah.
you're tense.
Yeah.
And what's making you tense? This system that can't shut down. And then finally connecting the dots that it's coming from this trauma where you felt out of control. And so now you're so paranoid to be out of control, you can't relax,
Yeah.
and then I think you have a child, and you just start to be more obsessive about being in control and just being top notch, doing what you can. And so I think it all kind of interlocked at once,
Oh my
putting all these
gosh.
puzzle pieces together, from the sleep problems to the physical, PT manifestations, to the
Yeah.
mental stuff.
That's a lot.
It is a lot for
So
anybody.
what what was your, I guess let's kind of compare, what was your thought around getting maybe mental help and support maybe prior to your accident? And then what was it like for you to finally be like, maybe I need the help of a therapist? And what was your mindset going into that at first? Maybe you can kind of talk to each.
Yeah. So before the accident, I didn't need therapy. I hadn't had anything traumatic happen to me in my life.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough not to have any form of abuse in my life. I haven't had any accidents. I broke my arm jumping off a swing, but that's not going to do anything. I was in a great relationship. And then you get in this accident, and the people closest to you are saying you need to go see a therapist because they're seeing these immediate changes. Even the court case, my husband and my dad and my boss, these people had to attest to my personality changes since the accident. And even you yourself, you're saying, I don't need therapy, I'm fine. You know, it almost makes you angrier, even though they're trying to help. And I had a friend say to me, you know what? She never told me what her trauma was, but her comment to me was that, you know, I went through something, and when I was ready to handle it, my body told me, and that's when I went to therapy. And that's what you'll do. And it was amazing how I just didn't need it. People were for 5 years telling me to, you know, maybe you still want to see a therapist for that. I'm fine. I don't have any issues. To finally just connecting everything and saying, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, someone's got to help me sort it out. And, you know, that's what the therapist helped me do. So I think by the time I was going into therapy, I was so desperate for help that I was like, I was drinking the Kool-Aid, because I was just like, do what you need to do to get me where I need to be to sleep, to relax, you
You were
know, that
like, take me back to 0 degree north. Like, I need help.
literally, like, get me back. Like, I'll take 5 degrees. I don't care at this point. But, you know, you're drinking 7 nights a week, a lot of alcohol, and, you know, you're not sleeping. It's a downward spiral. So I was very open to it, you know, and the therapist I saw was a family friend, had needed her. And so they knew she was good for PTSD. And so talking with her was easy, because she knows, I mean, I don't know.
It was vetted. She kind of had an idea of who you were. You had an idea of who she was. And so it was probably less scary to see her than it would be to be like seeing somebody you had no idea who they were and they didn't know you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I guess I haven't considered a lot about, but you're right. I had heard her name. I'd known all about her for 5 years, you know, and then, I met her, but she had heard of me for 5 years. And so, I guess that made it easy to make that phone call and say, hey, it's Toni, you know who I am, you know, everything, like, I need to see you. And then the way she made me feel, you know, like, all right, let's find time this week to get you in. Cause I called her crying at lunch one day. Cause it's like, you reach that breaking point. Like, everyone has that sweet spot where it's like, enough's enough. You finally hit that point of self-love enough to go, I want better for me, you know? And some people aren't there, and that's fine. It took me 7 years to get there or 6. I'm not one to judge.
Well, I love that you said that, because I think that is so true, is we all have a different breaking point, right? And I think the word that you used, desperation, is perfect, because sometimes it is when you are desperate enough to get outside of your comfort zone, right? Like, to change the way you think about trauma or your body or what you're going through. And sometimes people hit that point a lot earlier, especially if they've been very familiar with the process or whatnot. But for somebody that it's so outside of their comfort zone, or something they never pictured themselves doing, I mean, it is amazing what we'll put up with for how long before we realize, holy crap, like, I am falling apart. Like, I need help. And it's for me. I need to get better for me. But also, like, you kind of start to see the domino effect of, like, okay, my relationship will get better. My relationship with my daughter will be better. I'm going to be a better mom. Like, but mostly I'm going to be a better me.
Yeah, because you start to realize, like, why are all these relationships not deteriorating, but suddenly they're just not great? You know, and why am I just so nasty to my daughter all the time when she's done nothing? And why am I drinking this much whiskey every night just to, like, function? And you see things in the romantic aspects of your life, and you go, why is that? You know, and then it takes a lot to turn that mirror kind of and say, okay, is it really all 18 of these people, or there's one common factor, and it's me?
Exactly. So how long, like, once I'm curious, like, when you started working with a therapist, I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go see a therapist once or twice and kind of work it out, and then I'm going to be done. What did you know it was going to be a little bit different than that? And, like, how long did it take to really start working through some of your trauma before you started to notice significant changes in your stress? Like, in seeing some of those red flags turn back into green flags, like starting to feel a little bit better?
Yeah, I was seeing her once a week for months. And it's amazing what having that unbiased open dialogue did too, about me realizing, yeah, there's this PTSD from this accident, but there's also this issue that was swept under the rug that's festering, and this issue that's festering. And so for me, it took months, because you're working through this trauma of, no control, and yeah, like the questioning faith in humanity and those things. But then you're also fixing this relationship, because why did it get broken?
Yeah.
Why aren't we seeing eye to eye? And then this one. And so for me, it took like 3 or 4 months before she said, I don't need to see you every week. Let's go to every other week. And then I think we did that for a month. And then she kind of said, you're graduated, quote unquote. When you need me, reach out. We'll get together. And it's that security blanket, and it's a security blanket I've used many times,
Yeah.
because some weeks are harder than others, or sometimes you realize I didn't act appropriately and I don't know why I didn't act appropriately. Let's figure it out. Let's go see. So it took me, I mean, I still see her if I need to.
Yeah.
She retires next month. I'm sad about that, but she's giving me the resources I need,
Yeah.
because these people are truly, truly, truly in your corner.
Yeah. So what are some of your go-to strategies to manage your stress?
I always, it's an honest conversation. There's a lot of alcoholism in my family.
Yeah.
So my initial thought is always, I'll just get a drink.
Yeah.
And then but through therapy, I have breaks that then I say, are you drinking because you're happy or because you're sad?
Yeah.
And if it's like a sad or a stress thing, then I say, that's not it. Like, work out, talk to Dan, play with Lily. And I have made a few really good girlfriends, and they replace alcohol any day. Like, just going and seeing those girls just fills up whatever part of your cup got dumped out,
Yeah.
and just rebounds you. And so, and I can call them, I can FaceTime them. And so I rely on relationships, I think, the most, whether it's Dan or it's Lily or it's my girlfriends, because, you have to face those facts that, like, it's unhealthy to go, oh, let's have some whiskey.
No, I love that you said that, because I know there's literally so many people out there who are shaking their heads right now and being like, yep, they might even be on their way to pick up a drink right now.
And I'm not judging them.
No, me neither at all. I mean, there's no place for judgment, because like we're all doing the best we can. But
Right.
I think, and I hadn't really thought about this before, but the way that you said that really made me think of this, is like, we're kind of trained to not talk about the stuff that's bothering us. Especially sometimes with our closest people, because, like, I don't know about like you and Dan, but like me and Dave, sometimes, like, we're both going through stuff. So like when we're trying to, when we need each other, sometimes it's hard to just compartmentalize and be like, hey, can you set your stuff aside for a second? Because I need to talk about X. It's much easier for me to be like, oh, I don't even want to bring it up right now, because I see you dealing with your thing and we need to go get dinner. And did we call the HVAC people? And what are we doing tomorrow? And like, there's so much of a life that has to be coordinated that sometimes we don't make as much time to just be each other's like venting person.
Yeah.
It's always great once you end up like having dinner and you're like, end up into a 2-hour conversation. You're like, oh, you're my person. This is so great. But what I was going to say is that, like, it can be really easy for us to kind of default to not talk about what's going on with us. But a lot of times, the second we start sharing, whether it's with a girlfriend or your partner, or let's hope we don't like emotionally jump on like the bank teller, but sometimes
whoever it may be.
Yeah, it's really helpful to talk.
Yeah.
Because maybe we're not even aware of what we're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just a firm believer too, that there's just days, even when you're on the straight and narrow, you're on the 0% or degrees, that you still need to go in your closet and you just need to cry, because like, those are also emotions no
Yeah.
different than verbal emotions like, oh, I'm so pissed or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So sometimes I notice too, it truly is like a good cry. It just helps you. And then you like put your t-shirt back on, you get back in like your boss mode and you move
Yep.
on, you know?
Yes, because crying is a release and we really
Yes.
do need that. And it's kind of like a reset button for our nervous system. But some of us kind of have shut that down at different parts of our lives. Um, and so I love that you said that, because it truly can be like, we just need the release. We need to cry it out, or
Mm-hmm.
we need to release emotions somehow. Um, I went to this retreat once called Path of Love. And one of the things we kind of were able to do during that is have these things called burns, where they like just play a ton of music and then you can just lose your shit. And essentially just start like beating the crap out of, not on people, but just getting it out of your system.
Yes.
And sometimes when I feel like I can't cry, like I'll just like go to the bed and just like literally start like taking the pillow and just like slamming it up against the bed a bunch of times.
Yes.
Even if you don't actually feel that angry, sometimes you cry when you don't actually feel that sad. Sometimes you cry out of frustration.
Yes.
Sometimes you get mad out of sadness. Like our emotions are complex.
So complex. And I'm not a therapist. I don't
Yeah.
and I don't know, brain chemistry is such a beast and it's
Yeah.
so innervated with the rest of the physiology that it's
Yeah.
just like get it out,
Yeah.
whether it's running or it's laughing or it's calling your girlfriends, getting it out and then moving on. Or yeah, I mean, I'm not joking. There's days where I don't even know really what's going on, but going in the closet, it's like my safe place because Lily can't find me. She finds me everywhere else. And just having your like 5 minute panic attack or
Yeah.
crying, ugly cry,
Yeah.
blubber, it's just like it's cathartic. I mean, it
Yeah.
gets it out. I've been
Yeah.
on runs the last year where you're running and then you're suddenly crying. And it's
Yeah.
not even you were listening to music.
Yeah.
It's not even that your brain was thinking about sadness or XYZ, but I do think it's about, okay, I'm revved up. It
Yeah.
needs out. Like it
Yeah.
needs out.
Yeah.
Get it out. And then it's amazing how you can just recenter
Yeah.
and move forward.
Do you think there's an element of like accepting the emotions? Like when you go to the closet and you cry, you're just like, I'm not judging myself right now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying I shouldn't be in here. Like I need this for myself. Do you think the acceptance plays a
I
part?
I really do because I find myself to be in a pretty healthy mental state right now. And I've got my one of my girlfriends that I was talking about, her 20-year-old daughter last January was hit by a drunk driver, killed head on instantly. So her brother, who I'm also close with because this has been my girl for 3 years now, so I've gotten to
Yeah.
know her kids. He's 22 and he, by pure coincidence, was having a similar breakdown on the same day as me. And his was Angelina related.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because he hid it. He felt embarrassed when he told his mom about it.
Yeah.
And then she said, look at the text Toni sent me. Because I literally said to her, I'm not coming over. I'm going in my closet and I'm having a breakdown because it's just like, it's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how I quickly rebounded, but he hid and
Yeah.
he didn't feel okay about it until the next day when she showed him the text message from me and said,
Yeah.
look, this is Toni having a breakdown, doing the same thing as you, literally the same panic
Yes.
attack, the same blubbering crying. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. And he hid it and he felt embarrassed because I think, just maybe hasn't reached that point, or maybe
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard too because men tend to feel more macho,
Yep.
but it's just amazing how I was okay with it, kind of like, this is what I need, get it out, whatever,
Yeah.
move on. But he hasn't got to that point of healing his new grief
Yeah.
to say it's okay that this day sucked and
Yep.
I cried in my closet.
Absolutely. No, you're right. It's like there's a maturity that's required to accept your emotions. And
Yeah.
I think shame is something we all go to, which is just like, shut this down, hide this. And, that's one of the reasons I like this podcast, is because, like, no matter how I'm feeling about what very trivial thing I'm going through, sometimes just sharing that simple thing, like the fight that Dave and I had, or the health situation we're going through, or whatever, like this conversation, talking about an accident that got you to the finally 5 years later, a place where you're ready to deal with it. When we share what we're going through, there's always at least one person out there that's like, for whatever reason, I needed to hear that you went through that, because even though what I'm going through is totally unrelated, I feel the same way, or I had
Yeah.
that same aha. Like, we all share a lot more in common than we think we do.
Right. And that emotion, I can be sad about, Angelina dying,
Yeah.
and someone else is sad about their hamster that died or something.
Yeah.
And it's not comparable. Like,
Yeah.
it's sadness, period.
Yep.
And it
One isn't a
festers.
greater weight than another.
Yeah, it festers. And so I spent a long time thinking to myself, like, oh, it can't be PTSD. Oh, you're not sad. Oh, there's no irritability. Like, put it in perspective. And so you just have to go, you know what? Like, call it what it is. It
Yeah.
is what it is. And it's how it manifests in you. Sadness is sadness.
Yeah.
Happiness is happiness.
Pain is pain.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And I tell Dan this a lot. I feel like not everybody has felt love, true love, but I feel like everyone has felt sadness. And
Yeah.
so that's another thing that I think about. It's great to talk about because everybody, to whatever extent they've had, whether it was they lost their home to a fire, or, their daughter was killed by a drunk driver,
Right.
that's sadness that you feel, like, to your core. And
Yeah.
not everybody's felt that love of finding the love of their life and
Yeah.
that melancholy, but sadness and anger, those are things that we've been feeling those since we were 2 years old.
Oh yeah. I'm sure watching a little child at 2 years old, you're like, oh, that's how early it started for me.
Oh yeah, and it's amazing because Lily's very expressive, very emotionally intelligent, and I think that's probably part of what's helped me realize, like, we can all relate to how angry she is. I didn't let her wear those Elsa socks,
Yeah.
but her anger is no different than mine for
Yeah.
whatever reason I'm at.
Yes. It's just where you're at. It's a real raw emotion running through you to the capacity that you understand it.
Yeah, trying to accept it and just embrace it. I'm
Oh,
angry.
I'm angry. I'm
I'm
sad.
sad. I'm
I'm
gonna cry.
I'm confused. I feel all the things right now.
Yeah, like I'm
Yeah.
betrayed, or I feel left out or butthurt.
Yeah.
I used to just hide so many things and just think, like, "Ugh, I don't need to tell them I feel left out." And it's like, what does it do you to hide any emotion? And now, especially now, I've realized it builds up, you
Yeah.
know,
There's
everything
no
just
point in keeping
builds.
it hidden.
No.
It's only going to hurt you.
hmm And, I'm not here to tell people that, so you need to get out of your system right now.
Yeah.
Just rather, like, when you're ready, accept that.
Yeah.
Accept the fact that your brain is saying, we're ready, move forward, and
Yeah.
start figuring it out.
And you can do it at your own pace, right? Like you can start to see a therapist, or you can start researching coping strategies. You can start sharing with your friends, hey, I'm dealing with something, but I feel like I'm not ready to call a therapist. What do you think?
Yeah.
Like, I'm scared. And then maybe that friend's like, I've seen a therapist, or what, I mean,
Yeah.
like, you just open up maybe just a little bit where it feels safe.
Yeah. And I think too, it comes in waves. Like, I was far more ready to, like, restore my faith in humanity before I was ready to let the control and anger and those things go.
Yeah.
And I think it just comes down to, like, what you need to do to let go of certain things to move on,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
how is it, you kind of start to see the perspective of how much it's holding you back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about that all the time. I could have started having like a stellar relationship with my daughter the minute I had her,
Yeah.
or 6 months
Yeah.
because I got through the postpartum.
Right.
Or there didn't have to be kind of a rough patch, and not really a rough patch in my marriage, but just I didn't respect my husband. I didn't speak to him
Yeah.
well. I didn't communicate with him well. I
Right.
mistreated him. And all those things were just those emotions, that anxiety, that hyperactive autonomic, you're
Yeah.
manic, you
Yeah.
can't help it. And yeah, you just think I didn't have to have that period of time.
We didn't have to lose that. We didn't have to experience any damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not
And then,
that you can't fix it or like try
right,
to repair it. Of course
right.
you can, and you did. And you probably learned a lot from it, but you still are
Yeah.
like, what I wouldn't give back for like those moments of like me, my husband, and my daughter, like the three of us being
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
I think about that because she's active at this point.
Yeah.
And I think about how I used to be so cranky all the time, and it wasn't even her,
No.
that I didn't appreciate the moments where she just wanted to lay with me for
Yeah.
hours. It
Yeah.
was just, there was so much other anxiety and depression and emotions going on that now I think like, well, I didn't even enjoy those times. And it had nothing to do with Lily,
No.
Dan, anything like that. It had everything to do with this manifesting trauma,
Right.
you know, and I
No.
wasn't ready to handle it, but
Yeah. And that's where I do think we have to have so much self-compassion, and we have to really practice it, because you can't just automatically be like, oh, I have all this guilt about what could have been, and I wish I could have had that. Like then the self-compassion comes in and says, but you didn't know better. And it's
yeah.
okay. And your relationship's not damaged, and everything's going to be fine. You didn't lose. It's not your fault.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. Like if your best friend yelled at you and then came back 20 minutes later and said, "I'm sorry, that wasn't me." You extend that grace to them and say, "You know what? I appreciate your apology. The way that you spoke to me and your actions are speaking louder than the words from 20 minutes ago."
Yeah,
But yet we don't like to show ourselves that grace, right? We're like,
exactly.
wow, I just was nasty. And then you just have to realize, like, you know what? Give yourself grace. You went through XYZ, and look at the actions that you practice now that are a 180 from the negative actions you had a year and a half ago.
Exactly. And look how
You
far
know,
you've come. Pump yourself up and
oh my
be
gosh,
your biggest
yeah.
cheerleader.
I just think about like the communication skills I have with my husband, and it has nothing to do with him not listening or anything, and everything to do with I just expected him to read my mind. I was just irritable, cranky. I didn't speak respectfully to him,
Right.
and you just think about, what, give yourself grace, because now you you speak gracefully to him,
Yeah.
respectfully, and you communicate so much better,
Yeah.
and I still have my woman moments where I'm like, you couldn't read my mind. Yeah, I wanted a cheeseburger. Why didn't you get me one? But
Yeah.
it's kind of amazing what just just giving yourself grace,
Yeah.
and
And
just
slowing
knowing,
down.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
which is hard for someone like me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm very manic. I go
Yeah.
100 miles a minute all day long.
Yeah.
So,
That's also a trauma response.
right,
Yeah.
because it's that instantaneous fight or flight. Like
Yep.
if I
And so
relax,
many of us are living that.
yeah, and it just became. I just started to realize, why can't I shut down?
Yeah.
And just the antsiness you feel, and the irritability, and yeah, just not being able to sleep, and realizing like I'm shaking my leg all night long when I'm sleeping, and it's
Yeah.
like physically manifesting that you have these like,
Right.
just energy and just something that just needs to come out. And now it's
Yeah.
like I go to bed, I don't wake up for 6 hours, I'm in the same position, I roll over for 2 more hours,
Yeah.
and it's just amazing what acknowledging those things can do for you.
And
That
doing the
release.
work, even when you
Oh
were
yeah.
maybe scared to go there, like you do it gracefully, you do it with the help of your support team, and then you do start to see the benefits, even when you're not quite sure you will.
Yeah. And I felt like I don't understand how she's going to help me through this because I can talk about my accident very well. And so I thought, well, what's she going to do differently? And for people that have that trauma, there are so many um I don't know, tools they use
Yeah.
or like practices they practice. Like she did something called EMDR, and it's very focused on let's think about one part and work through it and figure out and just let your brain lead where you needed to go. And it was
Yeah.
amazing that, I thought it was my hurt back and not being apologized to and all that was causing the trauma. And then it turns into no, you start remembering it was on one of my good friends' birthdays. So I ruined his birthday because I hadn't decorated the cake that night, and so it ruined his party because everybody's like, well, Toni just got hit by a car. She's in the hospital. No one wants to party for your birthday, and thinking about phone conversations where your brother is calling you manically crying and you're like, he's never expressed that emotion to me ever, and thinking, oh yeah, I got hit. And then I was on the concrete thinking if I don't get up, I'm going to get hit again. So then you just got hit by a car, but you're having to get yourself up onto the sidewalk, and then those are realizations and realities that I had literally blocked out, didn't remember them
Yep.
until I went through these tools like this EMDR. And she had other ones that have funky acronyms that
Yeah.
I'm in dentistry, not therapy.
It's
But
okay.
just, it was intimidating for me because I thought, I don't understand how it's going to help me because talking is not helping me. I've been
Yep.
talking about it through court cases. I've been talking about it with people that want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so it was refreshing to get these other means, other modes
Yeah.
to get it out and come to realizations about what it is that is triggering you.
Right. I mean, I think, oh, wow, so huge that you just said that is you can be having the same conversations with your family, with your partner. Like, I went through this trauma. It was like this, this story. You're like, you're on this, it's like you're saying the same 8-track over and over.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the therapist comes in and is like, oh, here's like an entire CD collection we can explore on the same topic. And you're like, I didn't have access to I didn't know I needed to talk about any of these things.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you completely block it out. And it's funny because having my biology, and I did biology with like an emphasis in more anatomical and medicine versus like ecology and
Right.
bugs and animals. So, mine was very focused on pre-med. And so for someone that had so much background on the human body, it was really interesting for me to not catch every single one of these red flags. And I think I'm just ignoring it, and then it's remarkable to see that I thought I remembered details that then come back and realize I didn't remember half of what happened. My body protected me so quickly. And then the other half of the book is what was really clogging me up.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I would have never, I mean, I would have literally never remembered those details,
Yeah.
other details like getting in the MRI, they're pulling glass and metal out of my back just so I can get an MRI when you're in the ER. And these are things that they seem minor, but they're the things that your brain hangs up on, you know?
Yes. Oh, that's
It's the
so
craziest thing.
it's kind of a powerful like analogy how you just said that is it's almost like when we experience something in our life, it's kind of like sucking up something through a vacuum that's not supposed to go up. Like you don't know what's going to pass through and what's actually going to end up getting caught. And then what else
Yeah.
gets attached to that piece. You don't get to choose. You don't
No.
get to say, no, I've processed it enough. I'm good. It's like,
Yeah.
it's actually, if only it would be that easy that it were up to us. It's
Right.
definitely not up to us. We're not in
Yeah.
control of that.
It's been really interesting because you think that your brain is you, and then you realize, like, no, we're too, and I don't know if people that haven't been through the trauma don't understand what I'm saying, but
Right.
through all this, I've realized, no, I've got my brain and its sole purpose is defense.
Yep.
And then I've got Toni, and her purpose is understanding life and defense, but also vulnerability and lack of control and, da, 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 da. So just understanding what your brain is doing to protect you. It's almost like we all have
Yeah.
two personalities, your brain and you,
Yeah.
and coming to terms with, okay, me has changed and my
Yeah.
brain has protected me from that.
Yeah.
But now it's time to face it and love the new me and also be a good person. Like, I
Yeah.
realized I was kind of becoming a shitty person,
Yeah.
excuse my language.
Yeah. It's
But
fine.
when, you see what you're doing to relationships and to yourself,
Yeah.
you kind of go, okay, all right.
Yeah. That was
Pump the
that was when
brakes.
you knew. You were like, I don't like who I'm becoming.
Yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
how nasty I am. I don't like how not everybody is looking forward to interacting with me. Jim Carrey has a quote, and it's one of my favorite quotes, and it literally says, he says, I wish people could realize ultimately that the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. It's not, yeah, it's just like not about, okay, money, that's great. You have cars, cool, but like, do people want to be in a room with you?
Yeah.
And when you leave that room, did you fill their cup or did you just like dump it on the floor?
Yeah.
And I
Did
was
you?
just draining people. I could
Yeah.
just tell conversations with me were draining people. And it's just like, it's hard, but to go, all right, something's not right, you know, and it's great.
That was a brave step you took though, because a lot of people kind of get stuck in that loop saying, well, I guess this is just my life. I guess I'm just a shitty person that is going to affect people negatively. I'm just going to go home and drink and shut
Yeah.
down. And it's almost like you were at the fork in the road and you chose the path of like, no, I need to change direction and it's going to require bravery, but I'm willing to do that because it's worth it to me.
Yeah. And I'm a perfectionist. I mean, you know me.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that like the most imperfect thing in my life is me. And it's
Yeah.
okay because there's fluidity to life. So we need to have fluidity to go with the flow
Yeah.
and just accept those traumas and say, I have PTSD. It is manifesting. I cannot shut down.
Yeah.
And it looks like XYZ and I've got to address it. And
Yeah.
and that's such a hard thing to say to yourself, let
Yeah.
alone to then go out and tell all the people in your life, hey, I'm screwing us up, our relationship up, but I'm acknowledging that finally and I'm doing something about it.
Yeah.
But it's
Oh,
amazing. I mean, even in the last year and a half, my relationships with people have like deepened and strengthened exponentially because of it.
I
You know,
love that.
you gain communication skills with people and you start to understand you more and look at, okay, how can I effectively communicate with this person? Because you start to understand people more.
Yeah.
Just being open about like, I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
There's got to be some amount of change going on constantly.
Yeah.
We could have this conversation in 5 years and I'll be tooting some other horn,
Yep.
you
Yeah. We're
know?
gonna be we're gonna change.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just coming to terms with that. It's been freeing. It's been peaceful.
You would
Finally.
recommend it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I
But
love
it's
that.
hard. It's hard because I want to tell people you've been through trauma, go to therapy. But truly it comes down to like when you're ready, don't ignore it. And that's my
Yes.
advice. Don't ignore it. I ignored it for a long time, even though I knew this is my body telling me it's ready.
Yeah.
I ignored it to a point where, I'm thinking bones are broken and things like that. And
Yeah.
then, so when you're ready, go for it,
I
you
love
know?
that. And that was going to be my last question for us is what actually it's a little bit different. I love your advice and I think it's so good, but and if it's the same, that's totally okay. But what advice would you give your then self right after the car accident? Like what do you wish you could just slip? What information would you slip her?
That's an interesting question. I think probably the first thing would have been just to like forgive. Because like being so caught up on his behavior and his family's behavior and the court case, that just like takes it out of you. And then you realize, you know what, just forgive. Like, it's an honest mistake. Show him grace in the fact that he just hit a person. He's traumatized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, his car's totaled. He's traumatized,
Yeah.
you know? And I think I would have just said that immediately. Just forgive yourself for your emotions. Forgive that person for doing that to you because he didn't mean to do it, you know? And then I think secondary, it would be the same advice that my friend gave me, that when don't force therapy, but when you're ready for it, accept it.
Yeah.
You'll know.
Oh,
You'll know.
that's great. And, just thinking of the word forgiveness is like, what does forgiveness actually do? Like, forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for yourself. And it really comes down to acceptance, right? Like, if you, and again, no judgment for how angry you might have been or how stressed out that must have been. But when we can get ourselves to a place where we just accept, yeah, I'm being treated really crappily by this guy who hit me, but I'm going to let that go because the other choice is to be in resistance with this and to be in pain and to be stressed out and to be angry and to carry that around 24/7.
Yeah.
Is it worth it for me? Do I deserve to carry that around?
And it does not change that outcome, right?
Yeah.
Everything went down the way it went down, regardless if I was pissed at him, I was accepting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, I can talk to some of my close family about it, and you can tell they haven't forgiven. So they get angry
Yeah.
if the topic comes back up.
Yeah.
And I don't. And it's because there's just acceptance. And, my friend, the one whose daughter died, it was really sad. The daughter was also in the car with the cousin. So they both died on impact.
Oh.
So you got two sets of grieving parents. And my friend, she is the most resilient human I've ever met. And before the year was even over, 6 months later, she's saying, I forgive the girl that got in her car drunk and killed my daughter. And I hope that when she gets out of jail, she becomes a better person, a better version of herself. Like, my friend is just so healthy, and she's just not ready to move on, but she's ready to just have the new normal of life that doesn't include Angelina here.
Yeah.
But the other parents are still so caught up on anger that I don't think they've even accepted it. And it's been over a year. So, but that was me, I was in the same boat as them. And so I think forgiveness it's huge.
And it's something that, you honestly can't force yourself, right? Like, it's not like a light switch where you just walk into the room and you say forgiveness, but it is something you can work towards if you want it. And it's for some of us, it happens a little easier. We're more mature. We've gone through enough. We've come to it faster. And for others of us, it's something we have to really work at and maybe need the help of a therapist and to process it all and to be angry about it and to release it from our bodies, right? Not just stay with all of the tears held in or all of that anger held in. Like, our bodies hold trauma, even trauma we didn't go through, right? Like, just because those parents weren't in the accident doesn't mean that losing their child wasn't extremely traumatic.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did notice that all these years, anger wasn't something I felt. And people would always say that. They'd be like, you're so angry. And that would make me angry because I would say, I'm not angry. Like, I'm irritable or I'm sad, but I'm not angry. So stop calling me angry. And I knew I wasn't angry because the day I accepted what he did and his behavior and forgave him, the anger, the rage in me was gone.
Yeah. Wow.
There was a slew of other things, but just to be able to say, I'm feeling XYZ and doing this eliminated rage. I mean, it wasn't even anger at that point. It was rage. It was like punching walls, cars. You're angry, and then you're dealing with a government system that says, oh, okay, well, you got hit. Here's money. And you think that money doesn't make me whole again.
Yeah. It doesn't take away what I went through.
Right. And they say, well, that's just how the judicial system works, is monetary reimbursement. And so that makes you rage because
Yeah.
they're suddenly putting this dollar amount, and people who love you are also putting a dollar amount, and they don't realize that you're just dehumanizing what
You.
happened to me,
Yeah.
that I was hit by a car, you know, 6 figures, whatever. It
Doesn't
does
matter.
not make my back whole again. It doesn't make my pelvis whole again.
Yeah.
It was funny. I just spent forever thinking like the physical pain from my back, I need to find a cure. I need to find someone that'll fix it and fix it. What you guys are doing, it's temporary patches. I need a fix. And I finally found a really phenomenal back doctor in Denver. And the first appointment with him, he was like, "Stop. You're a chronic pain and back pain patient. You'll see me retire, and then you'll work with the guy or girl that replaces me. So stop chasing this end goal because you don't have it anymore. It's just not your luxury." And that was just very like blunt. I'm sure I cried,
Yeah.
but it's freeing. It's almost
Yeah.
freeing when you just let that rage go, or you just
And
let that
accept it.
hope go. Yeah,
Yeah.
and go, it's the new normal. Okay. Okay.
Like I can either choose to be in denial and be angry and be frustrated and resist this reality, or I can figure out how to make it work for me because it is my reality.
It is. I mean, it was like the most freeing thing anybody said to me, and it was the harshest. You know what I mean? He
Yeah.
he like stopped me because I was like having a panic attack with him. And again, there's those red flags. This is traumatic. But it was interesting that it was him that just was like, stop. This is not a one and done.
Yeah.
There's a reason I'm a chronic pain management and back surgeon. You know, there's a reason. And so it's been very interesting to just come to terms with like, okay, some mornings I can't hardly get out of bed. My back hurts so bad. Some mornings it feels good. You know,
Yeah. Every day is a little different.
every day's a little different.
And
And
you've probably learned how to cope with that, right? Like on the days that it really hurts, you get to have your emotions about it. Maybe you end up in the closet.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I try to find the humor in it because it's like I'm a 29-year-old woman and there's days I can't put my socks or shoes on. So my husband does it. And then I just laugh and say, look, we're gonna be doing this till we're 85 years old.
Well,
Yeah.
Toni, I know that you've got a life to get back to and that I've probably kept you long enough, but I just so appreciate everything that you've shared with us. And I will
Yeah.
say, if you're up for it, I like to end every episode with a card drawing. I'm just going to shuffle the deck and then we'll read what it says. And then if there's anything that inspires of you, you can leave any final thoughts. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm game.
All right. So I usually just shuffle and then eventually one will just kind of pop up. Okay. I'm going to show it to you so you know exactly what it is. It says
Oh, look at that.
positivity. Says, if you can find even one thing to be grateful for, it will restore you to the light. Please, dear God, let me always feel gratitude for something, even in a tiny thing, even in the hardest situations.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
I agree with it. I mean, I just think to myself, I could have not walked again. So, all right, some days it hurts, or some days you're a little bent over, but you're walking again, Yeah, just have gratitude, just be
That
positive.
gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Like, at least you're still able to clean teeth and study the teeth.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt my back. So I'm like, all right, we sealed the deal.
Yeah, and you were
So
able to
funny.
have a daughter. That's really cool. And
Yeah, modern medicine's amazing.
yeah,
Helped me do what I needed to do to have her. And yeah, I live my life. I
yeah,
I couldn't run for a long time, but I run again,
it's amazing.
So it's like the things that you think it took from you or whatever took from you, it didn't. So
Yeah,
have gratitude, because certain situations do take things from people.
yeah, and that
And
are irreplaceable.
yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
that's a good way to put it.
yeah,
Everything from me was replaceable. Took time, but
yeah.
we
Oh,
found it.
I love that. Well, thank you again for being on here, Toni. I so appreciate you. If anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to Toni, shoot me an email. You guys know where
Perfect.
to reach me, and I'll get you in touch with her for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. I'm open.
That is today's interview. Thank you so much for tuning in and just sitting with Toni and I as we kind of had this. Obviously, I felt like it was such a wonderful conversation. It is always my hope that you kind of had some new ideas, some new takeaways, and that you kind of leave with a little bit more inspiration on you tuning in and making time to take care of yourself. And of course, if you want any support with that, please check out my website, abitfromwithin.com, or you can find me on social media. I am your self-care cheerleader, reminding you that 1, it is okay to be exactly where you are. 2, just to be gentle with yourself. And 3, that it's okay to try some of those different tools that will significantly help you with your well-being and your self-care. And like Toni said, you have to do it when you're ready. So when you are, I'm always here. And you can tune in each and every week as I share a bit more from within. Either me, myself, kind of sharing what I've been going through, or like today, having guests as amazing as Toni on. New episodes arrive every single Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. If you need anything from me, you can, of course, reach out. Our email address is abitfromwithin@FeliciaMarty.com, or you can find me in all the ways that you can find people these days. All right, you guys, that's it for us today, and until next time.